Hey guys, my name is Lilly and today I want to show you the absolute best tomato sauce in the world. Actually, it's tasting so good that your family members and your friends will rip out the tomato sauce out of your hands because it's so good. We have made some this year and we've given it away to some friends and they were like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. How did you make it? What's your recipe? Why is this tomato sauce so much better than the one in the store? Well, the secret is that you make it inside of the oven and roast it in the oven. And how exactly, I want to show you today. But first, we need some tomatoes. Now, I'm in the happy position that I have a small vegetables garden and I'm growing my own tomatoes, and those are the very best for your tomato sauce. If you don't have the opportunity to grow tomatoes, you can always go to a farmer's market and get some there. The only important thing is that you get some which are ripe and fully red. So you don't want to get those tomatoes in the grocery stores which are orange, because they don't really taste well. They are not good. So don't use them, because otherwise all of this work is for nothing. So make sure that you get high quality tomatoes, otherwise the work that you put in does not pay off. So now let's grab a couple of tomatoes from my garden and let's see how many we can get. Alright, so I'm at the back side of my house now, and this is my small vegetables garden, and here I'm growing some tomatoes, different varieties, and this one here is one of my favorite tomato. It's called Hellfrucht. It makes this really nice fruit. It's actually a salad tomato, but I'm still going to use it for my tomato sauce because it's really delicious. Now actually it's the end of season, so we don't have too many tomatoes anymore, and gladly this year we have canned a lot of tomato sauce, which is good, but still next year I want to grow more tomatoes. Also, what you can grow is pelati tomatoes. They have a little bit more flesh and you will get more sauce, but honestly, in my opinion, the salad tomatoes are tasting a little bit better, and this is why I make my sauce with salad tomatoes. But also this year we have another tomato like this one here. This one is not ripe yet, but it's really big, and it will also give you a lot of tomato sauce, especially if you mix it in with normal salad tomatoes. It will make a really nice aroma. Okay, these are the last tomatoes from my garden. Usually I have to say I'm using about 1.5 to twice this amount. So let's put this on the scale. Let's see how many tomatoes I'm using today. So it's 3.3 kilogram. Now the second ingredient that we need for our tomato sauce is onions, and we need a lot of them. So for this amount I would use like 3 medium-sized onions. Now besides the onions, you now can also add other vegetables if you want to. You don't have to, but it's not a mistake if you add, for example, bell peppers or zucchini or melanzani or any kind of vegetable that you like. Now for plain tomato sauce, tomatoes and onions is enough, but because right now we have the bell pepper season, I want to go back to my garden and get some bell peppers. And what I've learned is that if you add a couple of peppers to your tomato sauce, it will taste even better. Now here in Austria I'm growing my peppers inside of the greenhouse because otherwise it would be too cold. I tried it outside many times, but it's not working well. And these are sweet, these are not spicy, but they will make your tomato sauce taste so much better. Okay, the next step is cutting your tomatoes, and you want to cut them into a clean and very deep baking tray. So this baking tray is like maybe 1.5 inches deep, and you want to have a deep one so that you can fit a lot of tomatoes in there. So there are some slimmer baking trays which are like this, but this is not enough, and you will risk that your tomato sauce will burn. So make sure you get a deep one and that you fill up the deep one to the very surface here. And for that I just take my tomatoes and I basically either half them or quarter them, and I just want to make sure that I'm removing the green stem because this is the last thing that you want to have in your tomato sauce. Now some other people, they are removing the skin, they are removing the seeds, but I have to say that this is not bothering me, and it's also an extra work step, so I do not mind having it in my tomato sauce. But I know other people are removing it, and it's definitely not a mistake to do so. Okay, so I was just cutting up my tomatoes, and then I discovered that I accidentally harvested one tomato which is not that ripe. So here you can see that the color is more orange, and also the inside is more orange, and the seeds are looking a little bit green. So these are the tomatoes that you don't want to have in your tomato sauce. Now, because it's only one, I can still add it to my tomato sauce, but the majority of tomatoes should look like this. Red at the outside, red at the inside, and around the seeds it should be red too, as opposed to this tomato where you can see some green seeds and mucus around the seeds here. So it's really important that you take ripe tomatoes for your sauce. If you have like a small part of tomatoes, you know, inside of your sauce which are not that ripe, it's not going to be a big deal, but most of your tomatoes should be really ripe. And you can also take the overripe tomatoes. As long as they are fine and as long as they are not foul and have some kind of infection, you can take even overripe tomatoes. Okay, so as you can see, I have used about half of the tomatoes, and I've covered the floor of the baking tray. And I always do it like this because the liquid inside of the tomatoes will then go on the very floor of the baking tray, and then you will have some kind of protection from burning from underneath. So this is why I first put in a layer of tomatoes. Okay, next we want to use some garlic. Yeah, I think this is enough for today. Usually I use an entire garlic for one baking tray. Now actually you don't need to cut the garlic. It's actually fine if you just squish it with the knife like this. And then you just pull off the skin here with your fingers. And this is how it goes into the baking tray. Not gonna lie, I had to cry a little bit because of the onions, but don't forget that with every tear that you're going to shed over this meal, it's going to become better. Okay, so now before we cut the bell peppers, I first want to get some herbs. And for my sauce, I like to use Italian herbs, especially thyme and majoram. But you can also add other herbs. If you have a favorite herb that you want to add to your tomato sauce, you can choose pretty much anything you like. So here we have some majoram, and this is really my favorite Italian herb. It's very mild, but it's going to add such a great flavor to your tomato sauce. And here at the side we have oregano, and that's also good for the tomato sauce. Usually this goes on pizza, so you know the taste, and yeah, it's great. I love it, and I always put a little bit of this into my tomato sauce as well. Okay, now here we have some thyme. This is some lemon thyme, and this is ordinary kitchen thyme. It doesn't really matter what you use, so it's really personal preference. Okay, and last but not least, for the Italian herbs, I'm going to add a small twig of rosemary. Now with the rosemary you have to be extremely careful because this is so intense. I'm just going to use half of the leaves here and that's it. Next I want to clean off the leaves of the other herbs. Okay, so this is the amount of herbs that I'm using, and when using fresh herbs you want to use more. If you're using dry herbs, this is far too much. So for dry herbs I would like use this much of thyme and this much of oregano and majoram. I'm using the herbs now to make sure that they are not getting burned at the very surface. And now I'm going to cover the herbs with the rest of the tomatoes and the bell peppers. Now while I'm cutting up the rest of the tomatoes and the bell peppers, we can start preheating the oven. So I'm always using this setting here, which means the heat is coming from above but also underneath. And then we need to set it at a pretty high temperature, which is about 200 degrees Celsius. And you need a high temperature so that the vegetables are roasting. You want to have a golden brown surface on the vegetables. Okay, now we have to leave in the tomatoes and onions and peppers for about 1.5 hours. But the important thing is that you turn over the lot every 15 minutes because otherwise the top is going to burn and get black. Okay, so while our tomato sauce is baking, we can now prepare the chars. And you can use some mason jars, or here I have some cheap Italian jars. Here you will need a lid every time you're using the jars. And these ones I actually favor over the other ones. So these are my favorite jars. And I really like them because the only thing that you need to replace every year is this rubber seal. I'm not sure which is cheaper, if you get this or the lid every year. But I really like this here. And also these jars, they stack really well because they are rather like short and broad. So you can stack a lot of jars on top of each other. And yeah, it's also really easy to fill in and also to get out some tomato sauce because the opening is so big. So I really like these Italian pickling jars. Yeah, and the brand of this one is Fido. And here we have the Meawhile jar. I like these ones too. Okay, the first 15 minutes have passed. So when you're opening up the oven, make sure that you're not looking into the heat wave. So I try to stay as low as possible. Now you can see the first, yeah, not really roasting, but you can see that the vegetables are cooking. And now the tomatoes are releasing some liquid, which is now collecting at the bottom of the tray. Okay, now let's go for another 15 minutes. Nice. Okay, second round. Finally, you can see the water from the tomatoes. It's collecting and it's bubbling. Oh. Okay, so this is how the sauce looks after 1 hour of cooking, roasting. You can see that the volume has gone down and we have signs of a browning surface now. Oh. Okay, Okay, so this is what you get after 1.5 hours inside of the oven. And you can see some darker spots here and there, and this is where the vegetables have roasted. And now we are going to fill everything into a pot and then puree it. Okay, so this is our tomato sauce. It came out a little bit thick. Maybe for this amount you can use like 15 minutes of less roasting time in the oven. So usually it's a little bit more liquid, but this is going to taste even more intense. So now we want to add some salt. At this amount I will add like 1 tablespoon. And this is Himalayan sea salt actually, so it's not as intense as the iodized salt that you get in the store. Now, because tomatoes are quite acidic, you also want to add a little bit of sugar. So I'm going to add like half a tablespoon now, and later on I can add more sugar. And we want to add a good amount of pepper. Okay, now this is going back on the stove. And we want to cook it some more to make sure that everything is keeping sterile. Okay, while this is boiling and sterilizing, I am preparing the oven again. So this is the same baking tray as I have used before, and I'm filling it up with some water, and this is going to be our water bath. Okay, I'm sterilizing the jars now. And please don't burn yourself when you're doing this. Okay, whatever you do, make sure that you are not making the rim of the jar dirty. If it's getting dirty, then use some rum or vodka and take a kitchen towel and just clean off the rim. Okay, so now we are going to leave this in our oven for 45 minutes. Okay guys, so I will come back to you once the water bath is done, and in the meantime we are going to eat the rest of this tomato sauce as a soup. It's going to be the most delicious tomato soup that you have eaten. You can also add some sour cream to it, and it's just wonderful. And we're done! Yeah guys, so this is it. This is the end of the story. Here we have some really nice tomato sauce. It's still hot. And on this shelf here we have even more. So this is what my spouse and I have done and pickled this year, and it's really good, and I have to say I'm really proud of it. It tastes so good, it's really delicious, and you cannot buy this in the store. And you know what's inside, so yeah, pretty awesome. I like it. I'm going to do a lot of more canning videos in future because I think now is the time to. And if you want to see more videos like this, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel, and stay tuned till next time.